PJ, thanks everyone. Welcome everyone, particularly all the contributors up here today. Welcome to a meeting of minds, what was in the air, and we have an amazing collection of people here today. We have a selection of musicians who are going to play their own choice of slow air for us and explain maybe why they chose it. And we have a whole selection of other contributors here today. We have poets, historians, singers, songwriters, we have artists and photographers, and everyone has an opinion on Sliabh Luachra, I suppose. And I think they all mix really well together. So what we're hoping to do today is take a little contribution from everyone. Now, unfortunately, the only thing that's against us is time, because there's a session on here and PJ has just warned that it's on at 3 o'clock, so we have to be finished by then. So everyone's going to get an opportunity to contribute to this, and I hope I don't insult anybody if I have to gently move people along from time to time. Please don't be insulted by that. Now, the one thing I would like to say is we'll hold the applause to the end for people, if that's okay with everyone. And it is informal, so please feel free to talk and discuss amongst yourselves. The place I'm going to start today is with Peter Brown, and as you all know, Peter Brown works in RTE. He's a piper himself, but of course, as most of us are aware, he's played such a hugely influential role in popularising Sliabh Luachra music through his groundbreaking documentaries. And I'm going to hand it over to Peter now, and he's going to explain to us the slow air he's choosing and what Sliabh Luachra means to him.
Thank you very much, thank you. So, if the time is limited, we'll have to play the slow airs fast. The one thing I was going to do was just say something about Egon O'Rahil, because he was from this neck of the woods, and it's just interesting. Like in general about slow airs, I suppose, what would you say about them? They're part of the music. They're different from the dance music. There's no doubt about that, but yet there's sort of common ground. Like the dance music, you might say, seems to come from Europe in some way, but the slow airs, I mean, I don't actually know, but just listening to what different people say, are coming from somewhere else, and they were like a sort of an older art music that was in Ireland before these things were properly recorded. Maybe was it harp music? I don't know. Was it music that was used as sort of a background for people who were speaking verse, or sort of bardic, something for the bardic tradition? And you know, some of them have words, some of them haven't. As you know, the ones that have words, you could take a safe bet maybe that the airs in most cases are there before the words, you know. And they're certainly beautiful. Some people might say that they're sort of neglected a bit, in the sense of, you know, that you need a particular place to play them, which wouldn't be a pub late at night or that, you know. But just about Egon O'Rahil, I just to mention him, and there's a particular thing with the passing of Liam O'Myrtle yesterday, that, you know, he was someone who would have opened my eyes a bit to this sort of poetry. People like him, or Sean Clorach MacDonald, or Andreas McCrath, those, he was just fascinated with them. But you probably know where Scartaglin is. It says it's in the rugged Sliabh Luachra district, some 10 miles east of Killarney. And the family history, he would have been from 1675 to 1729, so he kind of covered the period of the Battle of the Boyne and the death of a sort of an older Irish era. And his family were sort of sponsored, you might say, by the McCarthys, who were a big family here, but that sort of changed with that order. And the strange to say, the Brown family, but not our connection, were the ones who then held the land. But the Browns, those particular Browns, were Catholics and they were Jacobites, so they supported King James at the Battle of the Boyne. So Sir Nicholas had his land taken off him for his own lifetime, and then you had his son Valentine Brown. It was restored to him, and I think Egon, first of all, was, you know, he when the land was taken off them, he had to move off to much, I don't know where exactly, in Castlemaine, I think, and was hoping to be restored to his land, but wasn't ultimately. And you know, I think that he thought that he was going to do better out of this. But if I can just find one, I just made, some years back, we recorded a poem of his spoken by a man called Liam Bulair, who was a newsreader in RT, and he just had beautiful Irish from that era, called Cowerny Whills, and it's his last poem. which was, if I can find it now here, the last one he wrote more or less on his deathbed, and it's just a very powerful kind of stuff. If I can find it here now, he's a lot of works in here. Gill in the Gilla was one famous one of his. I just remember Liam and Whittle telling me a lot about these. Just to continue on the story, in 1720 O'Rahil's old patron Sir Nicholas Browne died, and his English educated son inherited his estates. The poet was obviously delighted at the prospect of the resumption of the pre-1690 order of things. But the son, Sir Valentine, would not or could not accede to a special request that the land be given back. So basically that kind of washed him up, and O'Rahil, an impoverished tenant of the Browne estate, despaired at the end of his life not only at the Stuart intervention in Irish affairs, but also of any restoration of his own status. And he sums up his feelings in this poem, Cower ni Garret, no help I'll call till I'm put in a narrow coffin, and it goes on like that, you know. I will stop now, my death is hurrying near. Now the dragons of the Lough, Loch Lane and the Lee are destroyed. In the grave with this cherished chief, that's the antecedents, the McCarthys, I'll join those kings my people serve before the death of Christ. So this is a recording which was made for RT with Liam Bolair, the newsreader, and also it's sort of overlaid on Matt Malloy playing O'Rahil's grave, but just the language and everything there's something quite powerful about it. Now if I can get her to work the bit of magic here now.
dragon levan lenis wee, rachas on a vask le shak no weicht on heel, no fwa for ev maham, reveal the Christ.
So that's 300 years ago. It's just interesting to hear it and to imagine that this very place is the landscape of all that. I remember Kieran McMahon and other people as well saying that they reckon that when all that kind of high spoken tradition died out, that in some way that continued on into the music. Stop. And that sort of continued on into the music, and I suppose into the slow airs. So I actually won't play one hour because if there's time at the end I will. But that's just as to kind of give it a bit of a historic context and just the beauty of it,
That was fabulous, Bridget. We'll probably come back to your slow air. We'd love to get it at the end. But it's funny you mentioned there the music and the poetry going hand in hand. And I'd like to go next to actually Eileen Sheehan. So many people will know Eileen around here. She's from Gurtgloss. Eileen Flynn, originally living in Killarney now. Eileen is obviously well esteemed and much loved poet. And she's 3 books of poetry out, and you just launched your latest book last night, The Narrow Place of Souls. It's a beautiful, beautiful title for a book of poetry. And just there, Peter was talking about the background to the slow airs and the poetry, and where do you see the Sliabh Luachra influence in your own work? Do you find yourself influenced by this place?
It's so interesting because this coming out here in the car this morning from Killarney, this is exactly what we were talking about with my daughter, and I was saying, what is it and how do I define this? And like growing up here, I was writing poetry when I was a child. I loved poetry, and totally unaware that there was a history and a tradition of Sliabh Luachra poetry, even though I was in the middle of it, if you like. Like, it's not taught in schools. There was no one ever came to me and said, there is a huge tradition in this area. I was very aware of the tradition of music in the area, but not of the poetry. And I think one thing, listen to Peter as well, and with the recording, music is a universal language. Like, the notes are the same. There'll be variations, obviously, regionally and everything. But I came to it because, of course, the Sliabh Luachra poets, when I got older and got familiar with them, and of course we'd have to add in Margaret O'Sullivan into that mix as well. But they were writing in Irish. And here I was, a girl in Scart, and using English. And you'd wonder then where the connection could come from. But of course it's the sounds, because the Irish language poetry, even I'm not a fluent Irish speaker, but you can hear the music, the rhythms and the sounds. And that's universal in the poetry, whereas the actual language, the words themselves, are not. And there was another thing when I got older, and this is a bit of an old feminist rant, but you have to have those too. But it's a serious point, it's not just said for the sake of it, it's a very real thing, or it was to me, is that I suddenly woke up one day and said, Jesus, they're all men. I didn't hear of any woman poet in the Sliabh Luachra tradition. But I was very aware of women musicians like Julia Clifford and and of singers also. Even locally singers. I remember Sheila Casey in particular from down the road, who was a fabulous singer that was a neighbour of ours. So I was very aware of women in Sliabh Luachra, but not as writers or as poets. And I love that in the people of Scart, and I think all the people around here, there's a certain contrariness to the people out here, which if you use it right, it's a great thing. And that, for me, the day I kind of realised that it wasn't as a negative, it made me realise, well, the women were there, they're just not recorded. Because I knew, and I've researched, and I've kind of tried to follow this, and that the women were there and they were writing, but they just never got entered into the archive, if you like. But all that made me determined to think, well, there is a woman's voice from Sliabh Luachra, and you know, it often gave me kind of a determination with my own writing to stick at it, that it was an important thing to be doing, which was bigger than myself, you know, or bigger than my little words, you know. And you'll hear various mentions, if you look up old anthologies, of women referred to. But like there was one famous woman, and it said that she had 1,000 poems written about her, such was her beauty. And she wrote poetry herself, but it never even named her in the anthology, and didn't include any of her poems. And apparently she was more prolific than a lot of the men were, you know. So that was a big thing to me, but in a very positive way. It gave me that kind of a stubbornness, I suppose, to keep going with this. And that the music, to me, is always the vital thing, and that's probably the big connection between poetry and music, is the rhythms and the sounds. Like Egan O'Rahilla, they're full of assonance, alliteration, and these rhythms, which are a bit in the English tradition of poetry, which is what really Ireland follows, is a tradition from England, of sonnets and very regular rhythms and iambic rhythms, which would be like weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, a kind of dump, da dump, da dump, is like the predominant rhythm in much of our English, of poetry written in the English language, whereas I've never heard that. I hear an opposite one, and I'm convinced in my own head that comes from the music here, and maybe even the speech patterns of the people. But it's not iambic. It's that lovely hiberno, which is a backwards kind of a rhythm, where the strong beat comes first and then weak. So your lines are ending in a weak stress. Someone can come and tell me after if I'm right, because I just hear it. I'm not a musician in any sense, or know nothing about music. And I always said if I could sing, I'd probably have never written. I always wanted to sing, but I couldn't. So this is probably why I write poetry. So that was I suppose the big, that and the landscape. The landscape out here somehow gets into your blood and your bones.
There is something
That
about
connection
the
with the
landscape,
land.
isn't there?
Yeah.
Actually, and a great friend to many people here, the late great Mike Kenny, he always had a kind of philosophy about the mountains around here and how it did something to our minds and the way we think and the way we think about things.
Where I grew up now, when we came out the front gate of the cottage, I could see the Paps Mountains in the distance, which of course are a female symbol as well. So the whole landscape here to me was female. And it was full of strong women around this place, and I thought to myself, well, there's a lot of women wrote here. They had to. They weren't quiet women, you know. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be quiet either. Another interesting thing, and that's referring again back to Egan O'Rahilla and Margaret O'Sullivan. Like they're famous, really, I suppose, with inventing or being exponents of a particular form of poetry, which was the ashling, which is a visionary poem where a woman appears to them in a dream and all sorts of things happen to them and they get carried away. And of course the woman in this case symbolised Ireland. And it was written during all the upheaval, the political upheaval, when they wouldn't have gotten away with writing about Ireland as Ireland. So they wrote about Ireland as this dream woman. Those poems have the most wonderful surreal quality to them. They're set in a very firm landscape, which is the landscape of here. And I always feel that with the people here as well, that the feet are firmly on the ground, but the heads could be anywhere. And that, I feel that they capture that very well. So even though the language, for me, the Irish and the English was a barrier, if you like, nothing else was, as regards what influenced me from it or what I took from it. There was still plenty for me to bring up, to come away with.
Will you give us an example of one of your poems?
I will. I'll do one, and it's about a woman. I'm also very interested, I suppose, in just the observations, the folklore and customs of the area, and general stuff like that. So this is called Sexing the Eggs. She had no use for a glut of cocks. She filched the new-laid eggs from underneath the squawking fuss of hen. Slipped from her pocket a wooden peg, threaded through with string. She held it still above each egg in turn, until she told through movement what she was there to learn. Clockwise circles marked an egg as female. A straight line back and forth condemned an egg as male. If the peg held firm, unmoving in the air, the egg was dead. She tossed the cocks and gluggers to the brace of hounds that waited eagerly outside. Their glossy coats and sparkling eyes were admired the parish wide.
Thanks very much.
And I could I just add to that, even you know, the discussion. That's why, and I'm thanking PJ for this. And even a morning like this here for me is bringing it all together, and to have the singers, the prose writers, all the different disciplines. And PJ has been doing that with Handed Down, and he's somehow not only writing other disciplines from the area into the history, but he's writing the women of the place into the history, which I think is,
Very important.
for me, it's a very important thing.
Well, we're going to go from one strong woman to another now, and we're going to go to Bridget Joy, a journalist and author who's worked with the Kerrymen and the Kingdom over the years. And you often covered this side of the county, and through your work, Breda, you probably collected many, many, many stories from your times around here and the characters around here. And Eileen just spoke about the way the people have with language, even the English language, the way in which we put it together of the people of this area. Have you any example of a story or a character that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, the one I'd come back to always from here would be linked very much to the Flaceole here, and I would have come up to the Flaceole every August weekend. But I was doing a story in this place, and Tom Fleming was my guide, so he brought me to a little house over there on the left, and there was a man waiting as if he were interviewing me for a job. He had, this was the height of the summer, he had his shirt and tie on and everything, and he had all his Christmas decorations still on the walls. And Eileen says contrary, and he was contrary in a fantastic way. That was the late Corny Tagney. He'd be a Renaissance man in one way to describe him. He was involved in such things. But the story I remember best of him is when he was starting the Flaceole, he wrote to all the politicians looking for money. And I feel very strongly that the music and the traditions of here are art in its purest form, but there's an elitism about it. Apologies to anybody from Dublin, but a lot of it is rooted up there. And today you wouldn't get much funds for this. I'd say PJ could tell us a few stories about that if you were looking for it from central funds. But anyway, Corny wrote off. And didn't he get a letter back, only one, from one politician? And I'm not an apologist for Charlie High, but he sent a fiver. And as Corny would say, the Fla was on the road then. But I was, again, like Eileen, I was thinking before this about, you know, what is the essence of Sliabh Luachra. And I'm a townie from Killarney, and the first time I suppose I ever heard it discussed was in secondary school, and the interpretation was given was Sliabh Luachra, the mountain of the rushes, and they were saying that it was poor land. And there was one girl in my class from the Guineaguilla side, Margaret O'Sullivan, who has since sadly passed. And I will never ever forget, so many years later, the pride in her voice when she said, we may be poor in material things, but we are rich in spirit. Mm-hmm. And I think part of my theory about Sliabh Luachra is that when people are not rich in the material things, they are thrown back on their own resources a lot. And the same way, I think the Cooley-Kilgarvan district would be similar to here. And I think that's where a lot of the creativity and the music and the you know, the great richness of language, I think that it possibly came from there as distinct. If you were above now in the fertile plains of Kildare and Meath, you know, you mightn't have the same richness because you're drawing more out of yourself and your spirit down here. That's one thought on it anyway.
Thank you, Peter. That is a lovely way to look at it. So, you know, you'd often wonder, like, what is this townland of the mind that is Sliabh Luachra? What is that? And, you know, we talk about it a lot amongst ourselves from people from here. But I'm going to ask two people with almost independent eyes now who come from, we'll go next to Skip Gorman, who is an American, and he's the American sitting over here with the fiddle. And you first came to World Fiddle Day in 2013, wasn't it, Skip? That was the first time you stumbled across here. And I know you celebrated your birthday here 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. It was in 2015. You were back again. You celebrated your birthday here.
And again yesterday.
Oh, and it was a very belated birthday, Skip.
Thank you.
Very
I
belated
celebrated
birthday.
too much. Yes.
And you have a really interesting independent pair of eyes to look at this area. What are your experiences of Sliabh Luachra? What drew you here?
Well, I was coming from Dingle, and I just happened to see a poster. I was headed for the airport, and I had 2 days to kill. One was my birthday, and of course I had heard of Pádraig O'Keeffe, and I knew it was a special area. And I had never been to Castle Island, and I stopped in at Brown's Bar and started talking with PJ and Tommy, and we had some Guinness, and we were joking around and having fun, and I couldn't understand why the people weren't walking all over the town with fiddle cases. This was supposed to be World Fiddle Day. And so I thought I'd have a little fun, and I was talking with Tommy and saying, Tommy, you know, I'm an attorney from Boston, and I spent a lot of money to come over here in World Fiddle Day, and I don't see anybody with a fiddle. And he started to get a little edgy, and he said to me, well, how do we know you can play? You know, how do we know you can even play? You know, who do you think you are? And so I played a tune, and I just happened to play it better than I ever played it. And then you decided that you'd buy me a round of beer, and we just became instant friends for a long time. And I so appreciate everything that you've done here. And quite honestly, you know, Sliabh Luachra, I've just learned about it. But I do agree when you say it is a special place, and that when people struggle, something more comes out of that. And my connection really with Ireland is my great-great-grandfather, who, and it's a very interesting story. I started playing traditional Irish music in 1969 or 70 when I heard the Chieftains. I'm from New Hampshire. And Ali Bain came to the States and was playing some Celtic fiddle tunes, mostly Shetland. And I could hear the roots of that bluegrass music that I was playing, the old-time fiddles. And I just could feel that in my genes. And I absolutely loved it. So in 1973, I decided I wanted to go to Ireland and see Sean McGuire, and met Tommy Peoples, and I hung with Johnny Doherty, and met Peter Horn and Fred Finn. I was right in the middle of all this in '73, and I didn't really know how important a year that was for traditional music. And so I worked on the fiddle, and I had always been told, living in Rhode Island, where I was born, that my great-great-great-grandfather came from Ireland. That's all my family knew. And he came from a place, I finally figured this out just recently, from Ballygorman, right up next to Malin Head. He was from Donegal. And it took me some researching to do this. But I was always told that my grandfather, that he was the first Irish Catholic man to pass the bar in 1860. And it was his father who came from Ballygorman. And they never told me about his father. and where he came from. You know, he was the famous equal rights lawyer for the Irish from 1860 on. But no one really ever cared about where his father came from. You know, it was more about working your way up socially in the States. And I've gathered, in a sense, the same thing happened in many instances with traditional music and poetry. That it was lost. And people who were trying to find their way to better things, more money, that kind of thing, they forgot about it. And they weren't interested. And then I saw a resurgence in the late 60s with the music and with the poetry. So all I can say is I'm just really, really honored to be a part of this. And I've just loved Irish music now for almost 50 years.
And will you play us a slow air?
I will play you a slow air. I wrote this about 4 years ago, and I decided to call it Ode for Ballygorman. I know it's pinpointing Donegal, where my great-great-grandfather came from. I'll play it for you. And I never played many airs until I was teaching at a music camp in Massachusetts, and my roommate was Frank Hart, the singer. And he would ask me to play airs at night. He'd have his bottle of Jameson and ask me to play airs at night, and I didn't know any airs. And so when he got back to Ireland, he made a tape of Matt Cranage playing airs, and he sent it to me. And that was really probably the first influence hearing the Irish airs. You know, I've heard Scottish airs as well. But I'll play this for you, and I'm honored to do it if I can do it.
Thank you. We're going to go now to another independent pair of eyes, if you like, in many ways, and it's to Lisa O'Neill over here. And Lisa, you first came down towards Fiddle Day last year, wasn't it? That was your first visit to down here at all, was it?
Yeah.
So your first visit to Scart, and you stayed in a very aptly named tent that weekend, I'm here. Was it okay, the name of the tent?
Well, yeah, myself and
Alan, my boyfriend, he brought me down, and I was very much, what is Sliabh Luachra and where is Sliabh Luachra and who is Pádraig O'Keeffe, and I'm not going to talk in great depth today about this kind of music because I'm chuffed to be here, and the truth is it's an education to be here, and I'm only recently taking a closer look at Sliabh Luachra and even traditional Irish music, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, we were taking a trip down here and we bought a tent in Cork, I think, on the way in, and a 2-man tent that is more like a 1-man tent. And Alan said, "What do we call it?" And I said, "We call it O'Keeffe." So we pitched it up behind here, and it was magic. We were just here for one night, the Saturday night, and it was very special. And I couldn't believe so many fiddlers all gathering together. They all knew where to come, and yeah, that's my first experience.
You obviously enjoyed it very much. You're back again anyway, thankfully, this year, And
Delighted to be back, yeah.
Will you play us? You're a singer and a songwriter yourself. Will you play us something today? Are you going to?
I will, yeah. I'm going to play you something that is a piece of poetry I wrote a couple of months ago, which I put to a slow air. And it was very exciting for me to discover this. I usually write my own melodies. They're very simple. And this piece, I was asked to write a piece to spend some time with an exhibition in the National Gallery in Dublin, and to write some music for it. And I wrote one, but I was very taken by this second painting that they didn't ask me really to focus on. And the painting is called "The Aran Fisherman's Drowned Child," and it was painted in early 1840s. By a man from County Clare called Frederick William Burton. And in the painting, the colours are fantastic, and there's a lot of women standing around, women keening, and the fisherman has found his toddler child drowned on the beach, and has handed the child to the child's mother, who's sitting by the fire, and it's very vivid, and even though it's still, there's so much movement in the painting. And what I took from it, I can see that this moment in the mother where she's this disbelief and she's looking for life in the child, and because I can see the women keening in the background, and the little bit that I've learned about keening, that the keener is almost helping the griever move on some of their grief, and I'm thinking if the mother could say how she feels, well, I don't know what she's saying. So I wrote from the mother's point of view, and it was only a poem, and I was working with Cormac Begley, the concertina player from County Kerry at the time, the night before we did the concert, and he played to me The May Morning Dew, and I thought, oh, I think I could sing this poem to that. It feels very natural. And also, I think it's interesting to tell you as a songwriter as well that I felt like, is this stealing? Because I haven't done that before, and so what this interaction between the air and the poem. I definitely felt, is this stealing? But if it fits, it feels like no, maybe it's not. So and maybe you can tell me. And one more thing I'd like to say before I move on from this is just that the word. I've always been very drawn to slow airs, but that it's called air, and that air is moving through us all the time, and then we can't be alive without it. We're breathing air constantly, and I like the idea that the slow air is part of our physical, in a kind of mysterious way. Anyway, I'm better at singing than talking, so the song is called A Year Shy of Tree. Blessed the hands that make the food, bless the sun that lights the land, but damn the tide that washed my child out of the gold when my babe you can't retrieve. She must have met the marrow or the Mary of the sea, or the fairy folk that live below the lake of Inisfallen, enchanted form the waves took on to charm one so weak. Oh, with a handful of words and 7 chords, a year shy of tree. Oh, a salmon ride against the tide, with no wingman ears. Will you kindly take and wash her salmon back up on Inisfallen? We'll bury you on the land, my love. We'll bury you with me. Oh, with a handful of words and 7 chords, a year shy of tree. Oh, bless the hands that make the food, bless the sun that lights the land, but damn the tide that washed my child out of the golden sand. I have no need to eat no more. I have no babe to feed. And what in heaven need I pray for when my babe you can't retrieve?
Beautiful. Another beautiful piece of poetry mixed so well with a beautiful piece of music there. There's something so haunting about the slow air. So whether it's with the poetry mixed in or whether it's played on its own, the music almost talks to you a bit, doesn't it? And Paddy Jones, who couldn't be here today, but his grandfather would have been a neighbour of O'Keefe's, and he always spoke about that when O'Keefe played the slow airs, that he wasn't playing music, you weren't listening to music, he was talking to you through the music. And there is something about it, isn't there? And I'm going to go next to Joe Thoma, if you don't mind, Joe. And Joe is a hugely influential figure to the youth of County Kerry in the 80s as a director and founder of the arts festival Cabal in Kinmare, which are also a painter. So you're coming from the very artistic side of things as well, Joe. And he's a retired arts teacher. And You're going to play for us a slow air as well today, Joe. What was your choice of piece, and why did you choose it?
I'm going to play the Dear Irish Boy, or in book Bone. I chose it, I don't know, just because I like it, and it reminds me of it's the Sliabh Luachra thing of airs playing that it kind of, and this PJ's thing of taking it out of the air. And I was thinking of the murmuration of starlings and how they flow along, and then suddenly they sort of jerk sideways and take a dive to the left, and then spiral upwards, spiral down. And the way that Pádraig O'Keefe and various Sliabh Luachra players played airs, there was all this lovely grace, and then suddenly they would take a dramatic turn. So there was both this lovely sadness and then a kind of a energy that you don't really find in other styles, I think. And so I was going to play that. Yeah.
Love to hear it. Thank you very much. It's actually beautiful to watch you playing it as well. There's so much. You talk about the energy in the music, the energy that goes into it. You can see it and feel it completely. And I'm going to go next now to John Reedy. And John Reedy is a man everyone's probably very familiar with in the room. A great artist, a photographer, and a journalist. And he has his own online newspaper, the Main Valley Post, but also works with the Kerry Man as well. And he's brought a wonderful selection of photographs on one side. John, will you speak us through some of them? There's a beautiful image that you've done in the middle of this here that I'm looking at, which Pádraig O'Keeffe is on. Will you talk us through some of them? And the one thing that you always see when you look at your photograph, there's people in all of them, that you really capture the characters as well of Sliabh Luachra, I think, and the energy of Sliabh Luachra in your photographs. Can you talk us through some of what you brought today?
Well, I mean, it's easy to talk through the photographs because I suppose they speak for themselves. They are of people. I might remember taking them all at the time, but I don't remember when I saw them later on. But I know the beauty about being a photographer, that you see a photograph so many times, you see it new taken if you're sober enough, and you see it in a darkroom after, you see it in a publication, and you see it in a collection after. So people think the photographers are great members. They don't, but it's just that they see something so often that you can't but remember it. And the compilation over is the big picture, as we might call it, is of the monument out to Pádraig O'Keeffe on the square here in Scartaglin. The others then are from various, the one with the three people sitting at the base of the statue, we came up on the Sunday morning after the monument being unveiled, and we had a fantastic day. We had to celebrate Mike Kinney, who's sitting there on the left. We had a fantastic day of celebration here in Scartaglin that day. That's in '83. The rest of them are from various Pádraig O'Keeffe festivals and that kind of thing. And this one here then would be, I can't take credit for the big photograph because that was taken by Liam Clancy next door in Lyons' pub in I think it was 1955, that himself and Diane Hamilton did their tour of the country. Collecting music. She was the collector. She was an American millionaire heiress under the assumed name at the time of Diane Hamilton. I think, was she Guggenheim?
Guggenheim,
yeah. But PGA is a devil for setting people tasks. And he, for the last 3 years, the first thing he came at me with in 2013, I think, was a batch of about 45 photographs. He said, "Will you make a poster of those?" So we had to, all I could think of was Sheila Printables and the carols, remember the players of the year, remember all those faces on poster, but we managed it over maybe a month or so. But that's Liam Clancy's photograph, so this year's task was to do something like that. And the ones down the side are paintings I've done over the years. The top one of the door was, I suppose, inspired by Con Houlihan's line from the Wheels of the World, where he said that there's a beauty of a land where life has yet come, and there's a beauty of a land where life has teemed and has now ebbed. So that was actually a door I saw in the house, in an old fabulous two-storey house in Castle Island, and there was briars and daffodils growing up the door, and the door wasn't open for years. The second one down is my interpretation of Pádraig O'Keeffe walking the roads, which he did. He used to come down through over the mountain and down through a mountain into places like this and next door to Lyons'. And the bottom one is my way of paying tribute to all the people who came down here over the years, from Seamus Ellis to Peter Brown, the people who came to collect the music of Sliabh Luachra and the music of Pádraig O'Keeffe, and those in particular. So that's my inspiration. I don't know who did this, but I can't speak for that. But as a child, I grew up. I did an awful lot of my growing up here in Scartaglin because my mother was from the place, and I remember being around during the first Fiddle in 1967, and it was a huge thing. It was massive because everybody was talking about it. It was like people used to say around here, it was all they had. You know, they'd be working hard during the day. It was kind of animal instinct survival for a lot of people around here. There was bogs, and I mean there were people then, and they're still around here to this day, who would have far more mass in a bank of turf than they would have in a bank account. You know, that was the way they survived. That was the way they thought. And to think that a small village like this kept a music shop going. There was a music shop here, and I think Mikey Duggan actually bought his fiddle Is that right, Matt? In this, before it became Fleming's Pub, long time before there was a shop here, and they had a section of the window given over to, and they stocked musical instruments. And I'm pretty sure that Mikey Duggan said in that piece that Donald Hickey wrote for the Sliabh Luachra annual years ago that that Mikey Duggan's mother bought his first fiddle here. Is that right, Tom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean that'll tell you their attitude. And if I want to take the PJ's theme of what was in the air here, throughout Sliabh Luachra, what was in the air was an attitude and the love of the music and a deep, deep appreciation of it. They really appreciated people who played for them and who could play for them. And I even noticed it last night while the lads were playing. Jackie and Matt played last night over in the hall. And you were playing your own stuff for a while. You played a jig for PJ, but when you started playing the polkas to a woman, and in homage to Eileen, and to a man in the audience, the feet started going. So that's what's in the air here. So can I conclude that?
That's lovely, John. Thank you very much. We're going to go to Jackie Daly next, and we'll ask Jackie. Jackie's possibly the most famous of all the Sliabh Luachra musicians. The Clonturk accordion player here rose to the top in the 70s, and you're there still, Jackie. So what's in the air for you? What piece are you going to play for us today, and how do you feel about the piece?
Well, I'll tell you a story first. The first time I played in England was around 1970, and I played in a folk club in Cheltenham, and you know that they were English people because they didn't know much about the music. And the gig was great, but a man said to me afterwards, "Mr. Daly, that was a lovely set." And I said, "Well, you know, I was a bit unsure about playing the slow air." Well, he said it wasn't slow at all, it was just the right speed. So anyway, this is an air that Patrick used to play it as well, but he had a slightly different version, and it's the Wounded Hussar.
very much, Jackie. Thank you very much for that. Tá áthas ar an bhfuil Éimeann O'Brien an seo linn anó. Luachra mór an tangá túla tá timpeall na háite seo, and as a historian and an Irish language enthusiast, Éimeann is now going to share with us some of his thoughts on Sliabh Luachra and the area and what's in the air around here.
Rinne seachtainna bhí futóiríogainn duine bháin ón Gearmáin agus bhí suimigeachán. Áta ag cháil bhí an sean saoil, so cúgamar dí cathair chud darach, nó the city mar a léitar agus cúmarán agus lá álan an green go háir sa spéir agus bhí fógra an agus tuair na fógra tháinig de daoine sin 10,000 bliana hen, 10,000 years ago. Bhí sé an suíomh sin bhí site ag bun gácéad danan anam bhfuil ina mós an bandia danú nó danan. Ag fécinn síos ar an ceanta mar gúr na raircanna sin bhí sé smíanamh gur sibhialteacht a bhí an sin. Bhí na fili ceoltóirí fiú na heanam na logamnacha bhí ann. Bhí réanna sopán, más ráir, na mín tóga, machan táirigh, cumín na maithe. Annacha álan a bhí siar. And bhí na filián agus an cultúr béal bhí ann an sin bhí gan dát Onrú O'Sullivan agus mar Peter Éigeann ó Rathile, Siafrad ó Donegal an Dana, bhí Julie Gá Céirín, Taicríne ó Scannell, agus bhí na mion fili eile bhí ann. So now rán na faoin is cadínta an bhí an spalpín fána, bhí bhaint cúlasacht ar cordal, an ceodríochta Onrú O'Sullivan. Gaelteachta bhí ann an dabhairt an uair sin, bhí sé ag síne ó Margaret Luachra, siar go dtí Círí Luachra, agus mar sin, agus gaelgar fad bhí ann ó an gaelan an tam sin. Agus brín cuimh bhí sé scoláire agus sanóla I déad na gaelga agus bhí scríobh sé lán leabhar ina thaobh. Thug sé cuairt an teorann idir Círí agus Corcaig, timpeall Cnocht na Báil, agus bhí caiintóirí dúcha seán an tam sin sa de trocadí 1930s. An déan áramh sin the census néadagus a héan agus néadagus a héandia. Beag na gachteach an bhí na daoine beag bhí gaeilge agus béarlacha. So the Caimhne sin bhí was a man a gaeilge a siúr an sin was lá dána bhain. Mílam gaeilge có catínta is a bhí an tam sin. Mór an trúia. Is dá an rudí is tápta gur fad is táptaí beir na daoine, so bhí ann daoine ar le sa counter, daoine macánta, fíor cúiseach, dibrigh sé go crúig, bhí an saoil go crúig, fonaim sé tríd na pein dlíthe, gorta mór, cogan na talún, cogan na saoirse, an droch héal ar fad a bhí an tam sin. Well is dócha gur sa tránháin beidir gur bhailligh sé timpeall na tine agus bhí ceol agus rincha agus mar sin fuair sé capan sé fuair sé an faoise fas sin. Gur scéal fuair bháin fearr Sliabh Luachra, Quishagadi, Trolley, and Quirfal Trolley. How are you? Tuathal Moel. Not too bad. Trying to keep the word from the door, our souls out of the hill, and our names out of the paper. So one time she was behind Tiert, she non prev done or chocolate this machine but being the Dani poor but be spirit agus for song agus we shake has born the flan the call of Ian shot in Israel on we should and not to the double Dani call of this crack kebal in Luacar so I guess in Shane Hannig PJ and Shaw lecht na bige tá sé go hóntacht ag míú an spirit agus an gatra but just thing an rod beidir simúr go bhfuil an ceol an rinca a sitna mar sinnde but an gréidir ar an gréilge tá me an a bhór an ná níl na daoine ag gine an rod tá sí bhábhar but Mullen dún beidir rudí beaga dhéanamh ina héamh beidir tá drom na bhine cúpla focail agus copán té beidir úr sa teachtain agus bhí pop-up gaeltacht again agus tá méid chun seo bliain na gaeilge tá méid i beidir mí man fáin a bheith ceann seo bhín scaiteach an gleanna agus na eile so cúpla tá na cáda gom i Sliabh Luachra daoine deasa go bhfuilm dul a cúd go dtí Longtarn sios go gníomh go le sios go amachchan tabhraigh Christy Cronin agus é canna árán an áit sin an áitú cléad tú rugad mé an beidir an tárán is ansanum so sin a mé so dus cocád agus den Christe daigh go rud agus dis cainte bhúdumsa but mí
Gurb Margaret Gurb Margaret indeed, and thank you very much for that. And you spoke a lot, of course, about the richness of spirit of the people of this area and what they got from being around the fire, you know. And we're going to go next to Dr. Matt Cranage, and we'd like to welcome you back, Matt. It's our first appearance in Scartaglin since Christmas, so we're delighted to have you back. And of course, Matt holds a doctorate on Pádraig O'Keeffe, but basically is a long-time champion on all things Sliabh Luachra. So, what is the tune you're playing for us today, Matt, and what are your takes on what's in the air in Sliabh Luachra?
Okay, thank you very much indeed, and I'm delighted to be back here for this wonderful weekend. Just before I play the tune, I was looking up some of the. I have some of Pádraig's notation of slow airs, and for the most part, Pádraig called them airs, not slow airs, even though he did occasionally use the term slow, but he used the term air more so than he did the term slow. I've three of them here where I can pass these around and you can look at them. Éimean Chnic is one of them, slow air. Ban an Ir Ruad, this is a very telling manuscript, I think. For fiddle players who are here, you might appreciate the question of keys, C natural and C sharp, second finger position and so on. For the most part, Pádraig didn't specify that. You were kind of meant to pick this up as you were going along, and to an extent that accounts for kind of I don't want to turn this into a lecture on intonation and tonality, but it accounts for some of the mixed tonality feeling in the music, which I think contributes greatly to it. And you hear this all over the star above the garter, for instance. But in this particular case, Pádraig specified, he put in a legend, he specified where the second finger was to go on the A string. Now that was very unusual for Pádraig. That's the only manuscript of his that I've seen where he did that. The other thing is that he used some of the designations that he used for denoting what he called trills, what we now call rolls, like ornamentation and so on. He used these for slow airs, and I think that was hugely innovative as well, that he specified the type of ornamentation. And he also used kind of bar lines. Now for music which is has no meter, you know, coming back to what you were saying a while ago, and interestingly enough, you mentioned the iambic pentameter, I think, and you spoke about the inverse being here. I think slides are a perfect example of that. As in the slides you have the long, short, and so on, so the predominant one comes first, the inverse of so I think that bears out your contention that you mentioned earlier. But these tunes are meant to be kind of meterless in a way. There's no beat, yet Paul used bar lines to give some feeling of the kind of phrasing and the inherent rhythm. And I use the word rhythm for slow airs even though it doesn't have a beat. Slow airs, I think, have a great sense of rhythm and movement and so on, even though they don't have a beat in the strict sense. But that's, I suppose, a topic for another day. The tune I'm going to play for you, so you pass those around, we look at them. The tune I'm going to play for you has been mentioned a couple of times already. If we head a bit farther south from here along the county bounds, we encounter the Ballyvoo and the Coolay area on the Cork side and Kilgarvan and on the Kerry side. And the air I'm going to play originates from there, but it invokes the idea of the ashling. It's ashling yell.
We're going to go now to Joe Creedon. So Joe is an All-Ireland champion and member of Cork Coolay, and he's this Macroom native here, is a frequent visitor of course to Scart. But Joe, do you have a song for us today, or what are your takes on what's in the air in Sliabh Luachra around here?
God, there's a lot. I was thinking there when we were listening around the floor there was a lot of thoughts came through, and I was thinking that. But I can remember coming out of, I think there was an Oireachtas up in Letterkenny, which is a good few years ago now, and we were up there for the weekend, and we were up there on Thursday maybe, and came down Monday. And I remember coming down the road out of Letterkenny and whatever Monday morning, sick and sore and tired. But I was coming back into another world really. You know, I had been completely immersed in a capsule up there, and I feel the same thing here when I come here for the weekend. I come even last night. I drove back home last night, you know, and I was thinking going home that I was going back to a different world than what's here. And this is a world within a world, inside this place, or an Ireland within an Ireland, a different place. What constitutes it, I don't know. People say the same thing down about Cooley. I think someone said about the mountains and the way we're causing, and the terrain definitely helps that or creates that, I don't know. There is something special here, of course, in the area. There's no doubt in the world about that. I try to explain to people outside of here what it is, and I can't put it into words. It is there. Was it like this all over Ireland one time? Were we all like that way back? Was this the Ireland of old, and this is just a remnant of it left? We say like the forest in Killarney, was that the great forest, or the great oak forest that covered the whole of Ireland? And that we sorted all out to England to build our Houses of Parliament and House of Commons and everything else. Did we do the same with a lot of our customs here? Did we leave them go out over the water? I suppose reading Daniel Cochrane's book, The Hidden Ireland, he would concur with that, he would say that. How do you preserve it? How do we make sure it stays on? It's a very sensitive thing, a thing that could go, and I think very easily too, like, you know, it has to be handled very carefully and nurtured, and how we pass it on, or whatever we expose, I suppose, the youth or the next generation to it, and we can't really teach it, we let them soak it in. But thanks be to God, they're able to soak it in. I remember doing in our singing class in a place in Cork, in East Cork one time, and Jesus, I could get nowhere, like, you know. And it wasn't that the kids didn't want to learn, but it's just it wasn't there. They just could not freaking pick up this, like, you know. So thanks be to God, the kids here can, like, but for some reason they can. I saw it down Cooley as well. I teach a small bit of singing there on Friday, and you just throw it out there to them, and away they go, like, you know. That's that. You don't have to do any more. Thanks be to God. But yeah. A slow air or whatever in the air, I was thinking there, I would say Marvini there had cock came in here, and it's kind of takes as an air, but it's about a battle, like. And I think it's a different thing, like, you know, an air is meant to be sad, but this is about a battle in 1822, exactly 100 years before 1922. Where did she get it from? Had she the air before? Had she the music to that before she started writing the poetry? I don't know, probably. But, maybe I'll try a verse or two of it and we'll stop. And thanks, PJ, for the and maybe the year, I would say, I was listening to Matt there with Ashley and Gal, like, and that the year says that the music follows the words or whatever. I don't know. Try with listening, sure. Hoch haben Klan Kemme in Hilflere Shabim Marten und Fiersanihe Chon Shir Chal Sol Eik Machno Shalom Feni Deiten of Masminte Megestoch die Gwilte Lepingon Nyon Nor a Cholan Kak Tak den Ear is Glornenak Tak Leschens Lefoen Manarin Doch Schliabh Near Finland Maglor Another
Conif Nibus Kumochli Nasfarir Dagadar Gantrol Near Anban Pashte Mona Trif Natirko Atmagar Quilt of Irko Is Nami Lalagon Nik Vierten Terrengarde Taglater Nadimpel Ik lauk is Liene Say squealen a draw On Lugerland Ivadigin Shedur gat flammer Vales trill Plushi Gumartan Chaldarier Agus Temish Nachoir Notur no sarir Gwi mahasar chlad y gwel Chomad na dyrn na panig Lef panig siol Bocharid oing godani Lavlador ar dimpel The skapwydr ar nine In skapmwydyn ffendio Vi yn brok nawr fwn bael Vi barnit is beachor Vi hedges agus fwytig is na milelo Harry na vart gollag I gild gan chlog gan vans gan rah gan shem I dinte tasse mas na bien gan fwish god yo Kjeld molle bord le hisse Nar hila marasador at the gem of green des a ancient saw. Stadded fast the grantive tan love flesh and green out tan the market and drochrig the win the mull of more. Ní gan do ma hilralo nar farade don muine a tarag skile godi ergor nar diend of stad haldagnes nar diend of karikun hug na sliw mar milk and shnat mar da iog agus gemcha shon biog ach sarar kriol pika the slat magoid gan sol the sauce of khie na die laskedio
Joe, so thank you very much for that. I think Joe put it really well there when he said it's just hard to explain. It is a hard thing to explain. You just have to soak it in. And I hope everybody today enjoys soaking in the culture that they're going to get here in Scart for the rest of the day and the evening. And I'd like to really thank absolutely everyone for the most beautiful contributions. It was a pleasure to listen to everyone here today. And I'd like to finish with maybe, Peter, would you mind playing for us a slow air on the pipes, please?
I will, thanks for that.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, I must say that singing is really beautiful, the came in. I remember trying to learn airs from singing, and you would think with the power of the pipes, etc., you'd be able to do a job. And the thing I discovered was that the pipes just won't get anywhere close to the things the voice can do. Like I remember trying to learn Costa Bond from Sean O'Sullivan. I mean, you'll do it, of course, and you have different things, but you won't go near what the voices do. That's really beautiful. The other thing just worth saying, I thought, is that, you know, listening to the music of like the great fiddle players, the Michael Coleman, all that era, I never in all my time ever came across a slow air. Now maybe you done it that in that tradition up there, but for some reason Pádraig O'Keeffe valued them. I understand he was a singer of sorts anyway, but it's thanks to him that we have these ones. But the Sligo tradition, I just never came across it. Maybe it's there, but it certainly doesn't seem to. But he actually gave it that prominence, as you know, Matt, well, that he gave these airs to the pupils. Paddy Crone, he made sure they had them. I know he mentioned profession and so forth, you know. And in particular, the one I'm going to have a shot at now is this Queen in Yale. But that's again, I'm sure that he was the last person who had that, and if he didn't have that, it was gone. I can't picture there was anyone else with it, you know. And the same with the Queenie Conal, that we just placed a value on them. You know?
There's Margaret, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.